The desert sand whipped across Lieutenant Sarah Chen's face as she adjusted her scope for the third time that morning. The heat was already climbing past 90 degrees, and it wasn't even noon yet. From her position on the rocky outcrop, she could see the entire valley below where her SEAL team was preparing for their mission. "Falcon, what's your status up there?" The voice crackled through her earpiece. It was Commander Jake Morrison, the team leader who had earned his reputation in 3 tours across Afghanistan and Iraq. "All clear, Commander. No movement in sectors 1 through 4. The village looks quiet," Sarah responded, her eyes never leaving the scope of her sniper rifle. Sarah had earned the call sign Falcon during her first deployment. The other SEALs said it was because of her incredible eyesight and her ability to spot targets from impossible distances. What they didn't know was the real reason behind her extraordinary abilities. That secret had been buried for over 20 years, locked away in classified files that even most military personnel would never see. Down in the valley, the rest of the team was getting ready to move into the small Afghan village where intelligence suggested a high-value target was hiding. The mission was supposed to be straightforward. Get in, capture or eliminate the target, and get out before enemy reinforcements could arrive. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Rodriguez checked his weapon one final time. "I still don't understand how Falcon always knows exactly where to look," he muttered to his teammate, Petty Officer Second Class David Kim. "She's just good at her job, man." "Real good," Kim replied. But even he had wondered about Sarah's almost supernatural awareness on missions. The truth was that Sarah's abilities went far beyond normal human capabilities. When she was 7 years old, she had been part of a classified government program that no longer officially existed. The program had been designed to enhance human senses and reflexes through experimental procedures that pushed the boundaries of what the human body could achieve. Sarah remembered very little from those early years. Most of the memories had been deliberately suppressed through psychological conditioning. What she did remember came in fragments during dreams or moments of extreme stress. Flashes of sterile white rooms, doctors in masks, and pain that seemed to go on forever. The program had been shut down when Sarah was 12, after several children had died from complications. The survivors were given new identities and placed in foster care with families who had been carefully selected and briefed on maintaining secrecy. Sarah's foster parents, the Chens, had raised her as their own daughter, never speaking of her past. As Sarah grew older, she began to realize that she was different from other people. Her hearing was so sharp that she could pick up conversations from hundreds of feet away. Her vision allowed her to see details that others missed, even in near-complete darkness. Her reflexes were faster than seemed humanly possible. When she decided to join the military, the same government handlers who had been monitoring her since childhood quietly arranged for her to be fast-tracked into the most elite units. They wanted to see how their investment had turned out, and whether the enhanced abilities would prove useful in real combat situations. "Falcon, we're moving out." Commander Morrison's voice came through the radio again. "Keep us covered." Sarah watched through her scope as the 6-man team began their approach to the village. The buildings were typical of rural Afghanistan: mud brick walls, flat roofs, narrow alleys between structures. Perfect for ambushes, which was why they needed her watching from above. The team moved with the practiced precision of soldiers who had worked together for years. Morrison took point, followed by Rodriguez and Kim. Behind them came Petty Officer Third Class Tommy Anderson, the team's medic, along with Chief Petty Officer Steve Wilson and Petty Officer Second Class Alex Foster. As they approached the first building, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. Through her enhanced vision, she could see heat signatures moving inside several of the buildings. But these weren't ordinary heat signatures. They were too bright, too intense. She had seen similar patterns before, in her nightmares about the facility where she had been experimented on. "Commander, hold position," Sarah whispered urgently into her radio. "Something's not right down there." "What do you see, Falcon?" Sarah hesitated. How could she explain what she was seeing without revealing the truth about her abilities? "There are more people in those buildings than our intelligence suggested. A lot more." Morrison signaled for his team to take cover behind a low stone wall. "Can you get an accurate count?" Through her scope, Sarah continued scanning the buildings. The heat signatures were moving in coordinated patterns, like soldiers preparing for battle rather than civilians going about their daily lives. But there was something else, something that made her enhanced senses scream with danger. "Commander, we need to abort this mission. Now." "Negative, Falcon. We have our orders. The target is confirmed to be in that compound." Sarah bit her lip, knowing that standard protocol didn't allow for mission aborts based on a sniper's intuition. But her enhanced senses were telling her that this was a trap, and a sophisticated one. As she watched, a figure appeared on one of the rooftops. Even at this distance, Sarah could see him clearly. He was tall, wearing military fatigues, and carrying what looked like an advanced sniper rifle. But when he turned in her direction, Sarah's enhanced vision picked up details that made her heart skip a beat. The man's eyes reflected light in a way that human eyes shouldn't. His movements were too fluid, too precise. And when he raised his rifle toward her position, she could see that his hands were steady in a way that suggested enhanced motor control. "Commander, there's another sniper on the roof of Building 3. But he's not normal." "What do you mean, not normal?" Before Sarah could answer, the enemy sniper's rifle flashed. The bullet whistled past her position, missing her head by inches. A normal shooter at that distance, even a highly trained one, shouldn't have been able to come that close to hitting her in her concealed position. "Taking fire from Building 3. Sarah reported as she shifted her position. "This guy knows exactly where I am." Down in the village, the trap was springing. Armed fighters emerged from the buildings, but they moved with coordination and precision that suggested military training far beyond what was typical for insurgent groups. Morrison's team found themselves surrounded and outgunned. "Falcon, we need immediate support." Morrison's voice was tight with stress as gunfire erupted around his position. Sarah lined up her shot on the enemy sniper, but as she pulled the trigger, the man moved with inhuman speed, rolling away from her bullet and immediately returning fire. This time, his shot was even closer. Through her enhanced hearing, Sarah picked up radio chatter from the enemy forces. They were speaking in English, with American accents, using military terminology and call signs that sounded familiar. But underneath their tactical communication, she heard something that made her blood freeze. One of the voices was calling out coordinates and targets using the same kind of enhanced sensory capabilities that she possessed. He was describing heat signatures, tracking movement patterns in the dark corners of buildings, and predicting her team's movements with impossible accuracy. "Commander, these aren't insurgents. These are enhanced soldiers, like..." Sarah caught herself before saying too much. "Like special forces, but better. Way better." "What are you talking about, Falcon?" The enemy sniper had repositioned again, and this time when he fired, Sarah barely managed to roll away in time. The bullet struck the rock where her head had been, sending up a spray of stone fragments. As she set up for another shot, Sarah's enhanced vision caught something that explained everything. On the enemy sniper's arm, partially hidden by his sleeve, was a small scar in the shape of a crescent moon. Sarah had the same scar on her own arm, a reminder of the medical procedures she had undergone as a child. This wasn't just an ambush. It was a reunion. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The government handlers who had been monitoring her all these years hadn't just been watching. They had been planning. And now, for reasons she couldn't understand, they had sent her and her team into a trap designed specifically for her. Down in the village, Morrison's team was fighting for their lives against opponents who seemed to anticipate their every move. The enemy soldiers were using tactics and equipment that suggested access to the same kind of enhancement programs that Sarah had been part of. "Falcon, whatever you're going to do it now." Rodriguez's voice came through the radio, punctuated by the sound of automatic gunfire. Sarah took a deep breath and lined up another shot on the enemy sniper. This time, she didn't rely just on her training. She reached deeper, accessing the enhanced capabilities that she had spent years trying to suppress. Her vision sharpened beyond human limits. Her breathing slowed to an almost meditative state, and her finger found the trigger with mechanical precision. The shot was perfect, but the enemy sniper moved at the last second, as if he had sensed the bullet coming. The round caught him in the shoulder instead of the chest, spinning him around, but not taking him down. As he turned to face her direction, Sarah saw his face clearly for the first time. It was a face from her buried memories, older now, but unmistakable. He had been one of the other children in the program, one of the few who had survived all the way to the end. And, judging by the way he smiled when he spotted her position, he remembered her too. The wounded sniper across the valley raised his hand in what looked like a casual wave, but Sarah recognized it as something else entirely. It was a hand signal from their childhood training, one that meant game over in the twisted exercises they had been forced to participate in 20 years ago. "Falcon, talk to me." Morrison's voice cut through her shock. His team was pinned down behind the stone wall, taking heavy fire from multiple directions. Sarah forced herself to focus on the immediate situation. Whatever reunion was happening here would have to wait. Her teammates were in danger, and that took priority over everything else. "I count 12 hostiles, Commander. They're using coordinated fire and movement tactics. This isn't a random insurgent cell. Tell me something I don't know, Falcon." Sarah began picking off targets with methodical precision. Her enhanced reflexes and vision gave her a significant advantage, even against opponents who had clearly received similar training. One by one, she eliminated the fighters who were keeping her team pinned down. But the enemy sniper wasn't making it easy. Every time Sarah lined up a shot, he would send a round her way, forcing her to move and disrupting her rhythm. He knew her capabilities because he had the same ones, and he was using that knowledge to neutralize her effectiveness. "Rodriguez, can you make it to Building 2? Sarah called out as she spotted a path through the gunfire. "Negative, Falcon. Too much heat coming from that direction." Sarah made a decision that went against everything in her training manual. She stood up from her concealed position, making herself a target for the enemy sniper, and began rapid firing at the fighters surrounding her team. Her enhanced reflexes allowed her to acquire and engage targets faster than should have been humanly possible. The enemy sniper took the bait, focusing his fire on her position. This gave Morrison's team the opening they needed to advance toward better cover. But as Sarah dove behind a boulder to avoid the sniper's shots, she realized that the enemy fighter's accuracy was improving. He was learning her movement patterns, adapting to her enhanced capabilities. That wasn't something a normal soldier could do, no matter how well trained. "Wilson, do you have eyes on the target building?" Sarah asked as she reloaded. "Affirmative. Building 4, second floor. I can see movement through the windows. That's our primary objective. We need to complete this mission and get out of here." What Sarah didn't say was that she suspected the whole mission had been designed as a test. Someone wanted to see how she and her team would perform against enhanced opponents. The question was whether they were expected to succeed or fail. Down in the village, the fighting had evolved into a deadly game of cat and mouse. Morrison's team was advancing building by building, using their superior training and teamwork to overcome opponents who had physical advantages. But the enemy soldiers were adapting quickly, and it was becoming clear that this battle could go either way. "Falcon, I need you to take out that sniper," Morrison ordered. "We can't advance while he's got Overwatch on our position." Sarah had been trying to do exactly that for the past 10 minutes, but her childhood companion was proving to be just as skilled as she was. Every time she thought she had him lined up, he would move or return fire, forcing her to adjust. "He's good, Commander. Really good. This might take a while." "We don't have a while. Kim just took a hit, and our extraction window is closing fast." Sarah felt a surge of anger at hearing that one of her teammates was injured. Whatever game was being played here, whatever test was being conducted, real people were getting hurt. And that was unacceptable. She reached deeper into her enhanced abilities than she ever had before. Her vision sharpened until she could see individual dust motes floating in the air. Her hearing became so acute that she could track the enemy sniper's breathing pattern across the valley. Her reflexes sped up until the world seemed to move in slow motion around her. When the enemy sniper next showed himself, Sarah was ready. Her shot was perfect, aimed not at where he was, but at where her enhanced perception told her he would be when the bullet arrived. The round caught him center mass, and he toppled backward off the roof. But even as he fell, Sarah saw him raise his rifle for one last shot. The bullet whistled past her ears so closely that she felt the heat from its passage. "Sniper down," Sarah reported, but she felt no satisfaction from the kill. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she remembered a boy with scared eyes and quick hands who had helped her through some of the worst moments of their shared ordeal. With the Overwatch threat eliminated, Morrison's team was able to advance rapidly on the target building. Sarah provided covering fire, picking off any enemy soldiers who tried to interfere with their movement. Building 4 secured, Wilson reported a few minutes later. Target acquired. The high-value target turned out to be a middle-aged man in civilian clothes who surrendered without resistance. But, as Sarah watched through her scope, she noticed something odd about the way the man looked at Morrison's team. There was no surprise on his face, no fear. He had been expecting them. Package secured, Falcon. Time to go. As the team prepared for extraction, Sarah continued scanning the village for threats. Most of the enemy fighters were down, but her enhanced senses were picking up movement in areas that should have been clear. Commander, we've got company coming from the north. Vehicles moving fast. Through her scope, Sarah could see a convoy of military trucks approaching the village. But these weren't Afghan military vehicles, and they weren't insurgent technicals either. They were American Humvees with full armor packages. That's not right, Sarah muttered. We're supposed to be the only American forces in this area. Falcon, what are you seeing out there? Friendlies approaching from the north, but they're not on our mission roster. Someone's coming to clean up. The realization hit Sarah like a physical blow. This had never been a real mission. The target had been planted here, the enemy fighters had been positioned to provide resistance, and now a cleanup crew was arriving to tie up loose ends. She and her team weren't just being tested. They were being disposed of. Commander, we need to leave. Now. Those aren't friendlies coming to help us. Falcon, you're not making sense. Who else would be sending American vehicles? The same people who sent us into this trap in the first place. Sarah began gathering her equipment, but she kept one eye on the approaching convoy. Through her enhanced vision, she could see that the vehicles carried soldiers in full battle gear, armed with weapons that were more sophisticated than standard military issue. Down in the village, Morrison was trying to coordinate extraction with their helicopter support, but the radio chatter wasn't making sense. The pilot was reporting that he had been ordered to delay pickup for another 30 minutes. Negative on that delay, Morrison responded. We have wounded, and we need immediate extraction. Sorry, Commander. Orders are orders. You're to hold position until the cleanup crew arrives. Sarah's enhanced hearing picked up radio traffic from the approaching convoy. They weren't using standard military call signs or protocols. Instead, they were using the kind of coded language that she remembered from her childhood training program. Commander, those vehicles aren't here to help us. They're here to eliminate witnesses. Falcon, you're starting to sound paranoid. Kim's wound isn't that bad, is it? Morrison paused. No, it's just a flesh wound. Why? Because they're using our wounded teammate as an excuse to delay extraction until their people arrive. This whole mission has been a setup from the beginning. As if to confirm Sarah's suspicions, the radio crackled with a new voice. It was calm, professional, and completely unfamiliar. SEAL Team 7, this is Colonel Harrison. You are to remain in position until my people arrive to debrief you. Do not attempt to leave the area. Morrison looked confused. I don't know any Colonel Harrison. And since when do we get debriefed in the field? Sarah had heard enough. Through her scope, she could see soldiers dismounting from the approaching vehicles. They were moving with the same enhanced precision that she had observed in the enemy fighters they had just defeated. Commander, we need to disappear. Right now, these people aren't here to debrief us. They're here to make sure we never talk about what happened here today. The convoy was less than a mile away now, and Sarah could see that the soldiers were armed with weapons designed for elimination rather than capture. Whatever test had been conducted here today, it was clear that the real objective was to assess her capabilities and, then, eliminate everyone who had witnessed them. Rodriguez, can you move? Sarah asked. Kim's bleeding, but he can walk. What's the plan, Falcon? Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Instead of following orders and waiting for extraction, she was going to get her team out of this trap alive. And if that meant going up against the same people who had created her, so be it. We're going off mission, Commander. Grab the package and follow me. We're leaving the hard way. Sarah led her team through a maze of rocky outcroppings that wouldn't be visible to normal soldiers. But her enhanced vision could see the path clearly even in the growing darkness. Behind them, the convoy had reached the village and was spreading out to search for them. Falcon, This is insane. Morrison panted as they climbed over another boulder. We're going to be court-martialed for abandoning our extraction point. Commander, with respect, we're going to be dead if we go back to that extraction point. Kim was keeping up despite his wound, but Sarah could hear his labored breathing through her enhanced senses. They needed to find shelter soon, and they needed answers about what was really happening. There's a cave system about 2 clicks north, Sarah said, pointing toward a ridge that looked identical to every other ridge in the area. We can hole up there and figure out our next move. How do you know about caves? Rodriguez asked. This wasn't in our mission briefing. Sarah hesitated. The truth was that her enhanced vision could detect the air currents and temperature variations that indicated underground spaces. But explaining that would require explaining everything else. I studied the satellite imagery more carefully than the rest of you, she lied. As they moved toward the caves, Sarah kept checking their back trail. The soldiers from the convoy were following them, but they were taking their time. That suggested they weren't worried about their targets escaping, which meant they either had superior tracking capabilities or they knew where Sarah's team was heading. The cave entrance was hidden behind a curtain of hanging rocks that normal eyes would never notice. Sarah led her team inside, using her enhanced night vision to navigate the narrow passages that led deeper into the mountainside. This place goes back pretty far, Wilson observed, his voice echoing off the stone walls. It connects to a whole network of tunnels, Sarah said without thinking, then caught herself. How would she know that? Morrison was getting suspicious. Falcon, you're acting like you've been here before. Before Sarah could answer, her enhanced hearing picked up voices from the cave entrance. The soldiers had found them faster than should have been possible. They're here, she whispered. 6 of them, moving in tactical formation. How can you possibly know that? Kim asked, but Sarah was already moving deeper into the cave system. The tunnels branched in multiple directions, creating a natural maze that would confuse normal soldiers. But Sarah knew that their pursuers weren't normal soldiers. They would have the same enhanced senses that she possessed, which meant hiding in the caves would only delay the inevitable confrontation. This way, Sarah whispered, leading her team down a passage that her enhanced senses told her led to another exit. But as they moved through the darkness, Sarah began to remember things that she had spent 20 years trying to forget. She had been in caves like this before, during training exercises that had pushed the enhanced children beyond their physical and mental limits. The program had been called Project Apex, and it had been designed to create super soldiers who could operate in any environment against any enemy. The children who survived the enhancement procedures were trained in everything from advanced combat techniques to psychological warfare. Sarah remembered now that these specific caves had been used as a training ground. She had been here before, as a 12-year-old girl who was learning how to kill with her bare hands, and how to disappear into terrain that would challenge experienced soldiers. Falcon, stop, Morrison ordered. We need to talk. The team gathered in a small chamber where Sarah's night vision showed them multiple exit routes. But she also knew that their pursuers would be aware of those same routes. You want to explain how you know your way around these caves in the dark? Morrison asked. Sarah looked at her teammates, men who had trusted her with their lives on dozens of missions. They deserved the truth, even if it put them all in greater danger. 20 years ago, I was part of a classified government program, she began. They experimented on children, trying to create enhanced soldiers with improved senses and reflexes. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sound of boots on stone. You're telling me you're some kind of super soldier? Rodriguez asked. I'm telling you that the people chasing us right now are from the same program. And they're here to make sure that nobody ever learns about what the government did to us. Kim shifted position, favoring his wounded arm. That's why you can see in the dark. That's why you never miss a shot. That's why I knew this was a trap from the beginning, Sarah confirmed. The enemy sniper in the village was one of the other children from the program. He recognized me just like I recognized him. Morrison was trying to process this information while keeping one ear tuned for approaching threats. If this is true, then our own government sent us into an ambush. Not our government, Commander. A shadow organization that operates outside normal military channels. They've been monitoring me for years, waiting for the right moment to bring me back in or eliminate me. The sound of boots was getting closer, and Sarah's enhanced hearing could pick up tactical radio chatter from their pursuers. They were coordinating a systematic search of the cave system, using equipment that could track heat signatures and air currents. "We have about 5 minutes before they find us," Sarah reported. "Maybe less." "What are our options?" Wilson asked. Sarah's enhanced vision showed her a narrow passage that led up toward the surface, but it would require climbing skills that her teammates might not possess. There was also a deeper route that led to an underground river, but that would mean going into water of unknown depth and temperature. "I can get us out of here," she said, "but you're going to have to trust me completely. And you're going to see things that will be hard to believe." "We're already seeing things that are hard to believe," Morrison replied. "Lead the way." Sarah chose the upward route, knowing that her enhanced physical abilities would allow her to help her teammates through sections that would normally be impossible to navigate. As they climbed through narrow crevices and across underground ledges, she used her superior night vision to guide them and her enhanced strength to pull them up when necessary. Behind them, the pursuit team was gaining ground. These soldiers had the same enhanced capabilities that Sarah possessed, which meant they could follow routes that normal humans wouldn't even attempt. "Almost there," Sarah whispered as they approached what her senses told her was the exit. But when they emerged from the cave system, they found themselves on a high ridge overlooking the valley where their mission had begun. And waiting for them were 3 more soldiers in full combat gear. "End of the line, Agent 7, one of them called out, using a designation that Sarah hadn't heard in 20 years. The lead soldier removed his helmet, revealing a face that Sarah recognized from her fragmented memories. Dr. Marcus Webb had been one of the scientists who had overseen the enhancement procedures when she was a child. "Hello, Sarah," he said calmly. "It's time to come home." Morrison stepped protectively in front of his team. "I don't know who you are, but these are my people. We're leaving together." Dr. Webb smiled in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm afraid that's not possible, Commander. Your team has been exposed to classified information that threatens national security." "What classified information?" Rodriguez demanded. "We're just soldiers doing our job." "You've learned about Project Apex," Webb replied. "That program is beyond your security clearance level." Sarah stepped forward, placing herself between Dr. Webb and her teammates. "Let them go. They don't know anything that could hurt your precious project." "I'm sorry, Sarah, but that decision isn't mine to make. My orders are to bring you back and eliminate all witnesses." The 3 soldiers raised their weapons, but Sarah was already moving. Her enhanced reflexes allowed her to close the distance to the nearest soldier before he could pull his trigger. Her enhanced strength let her disarm him and use his own weapon against his companions. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds. When it was over, all 3 soldiers were down, and Dr. Webb was backing away with his hands raised. "Impressive," he said. "The enhancements have held up well over the years." Morrison and his team were staring at Sarah in shock. They had just watched her move and fight in ways that defied normal human capabilities. "Sarah," Morrison said quietly, "what exactly did they do to you?" "They made me into a weapon," she replied, never taking her eyes off Dr. Webb. "And now they want me back." Dr. Webb reached into his jacket, and Sarah tensed for another fight. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a tablet computer. "Let me show you something, Sarah. Let me show you why you need to come back with me." The screen displayed satellite imagery of cities around the world, with markers indicating locations where enhanced individuals were operating. There were dozens of them, all former subjects of Project Apex who had been activated for various missions. "The program never really ended," Webb explained. "We've been using the surviving subjects for 20 years, conducting operations that normal soldiers couldn't handle. You've been one of our most successful assets." Sarah felt sick as the implication sank in. Every mission she had been on, every time her intuition had led her team to victory, had been orchestrated by the same people who had experimented on her as a child. "You've been manipulating my assignments," she said. "We've been utilizing your capabilities for the greater good. You've saved countless lives and prevented numerous threats to national security. By lying to me, by making me think I was serving my country when I was really serving your agenda." Webb's expression hardened. "Your country created you, Sarah. You belong to us." That was when Morrison spoke up, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had led soldiers into impossible situations and brought them home alive. She belongs to my team, he said firmly. And we don't leave our people behind. The confrontation that followed would determine whether Sarah Chun would return to a life of manipulation and control, or whether she would find a way to use her abilities on her own terms. But one thing was certain. The secrets of Project Apex were no longer buried, and the consequences of that revelation would ripple through the highest levels of government and military command. As Sarah looked at her teammates, she realized that for the first time in her life, she had people who accepted her for what she was and were willing to fight alongside her rather than use her as a weapon. The real mission was just beginning.